We were asked before to create a tic-tac-toe game with 5 matrices. So I decided for my mini project to um, do do some changes on the tic-tac-toe game um, by making a game user interface. So at the beginning, I had to import Tkinter as TK to help me with my game, and I picked Tkinter because it's really easy to use. It's easier than uh, Games and the other libraries. So first, this 2 lines of code, these create my window, the place where I'm gonna where my game is gonna take a place on. So I gave my window a title called tic-tac-toe, and here I have my board. Later I'm gonna fill it. My board is gonna be like grids. These grids are gonna have buttons. When you click one of the buttons, if it's O's turn or X's turn, it's gonna change depending on whose turn. So first, I have this for loop. This for loop creates my rows. So it's gonna say that um, create 5 rows. Append. I'm gonna first have empty rows. Then I'm gonna append 5 rows. Uh, and then I'm gonna append these rows to my board, the one I created here. Um, in this way, I'm gonna have 5 rows. Then I have this function. It's called check when. This function, you send to it a player. So I'm gonna check in 4 ways if the player won or not. So here we check vertically, horizontally, and diagonal. So here I'm gonna first say that row win is true. So I'm gonna check row by row. I'm gonna say if board IJ doesn't have, like, for example, if let's say it's player X, let's say this is X. So uh, it's X's turn. So I'm gonna first assume that X won. So after I assumed that X won, I'm gonna check if X really won or not. So I'm gonna get in this for loop. I'm gonna check if uh, if board IJ doesn't have player X. For example, this this grid, this button is empty. It doesn't have anything. Let's say it has O, or for example, it's empty. It has nothing. This means that X didn't win, so it's gonna be false. This means that X didn't win, so break out of this for loop. It's not a break out of this for loop. It's not a win yet. If I checked this and it didn't return false, it returned true. This means the player won, so it's gonna return true. I'm gonna do the same thing for columns. So I'm gonna say, let's assume first that the column is true. Here, in this way, I checked. I think that's vertically. I checked this way, like a row way. Now I'm gonna check the column way, like this. So I'm gonna check if um, I'm gonna first say, sorry, that the column 1 is true. Then I'm gonna check column by column. If this column doesn't have this player whose turn now, for example, it's O, I'm gonna check if O doesn't, if this this column doesn't have or if it has X instead or it has an empty space, this means it's false, so return false and break. If it doesn't return false and break, it's gonna return true. This means that the player won. Then I'm gonna say I have diagonal 1 and diagonal 2. They are both true. This way I'm gonna check, um, it's not vertically and not horizontally. It's gonna check that way, uh, right, left. You're gonna see that when I run the code. So here I do the same thing. I check if board II is not equal to player. This means that the player didn't want, so diagonal 1 is returns false. And here I'm gonna say if board I 4 minus I is not equal to player, this means that diagonal win to the other way to win is also false. And if diagonal 1 is true or diagonal 1 win 2, if diagonal win 1 is true or diagonal win 2 is true, then the player won. Otherwise, just return false, the player didn't win yet. So here I'm gonna do this. This function is called button click. This one is to handle where the player clicks. So first I'm gonna say I have the current player and the current player is global. So if this part I'm gonna use it to update the game board. So first I'm gonna say that board row call is equal to empty. If it's equal to empty, I'm gonna say that put a player here, and the button text is gonna change and it's gonna become the current player. For example, if it's player player X turn, I'm gonna say that um, instead of empty, it's gonna be player the current player. It's gonna change from nothing, from empty, to what the current player symbol is. For example, if it's X, it's gonna change to X. If it's O, it's gonna change to O. Then I'm gonna say that the button state is disabled. This means that you can't click here again. Like, that's it. Like, you can't click this button again because it's already clicked. Um, check if the game is over if all the grids are filled. Sorry, I have to read my comments because it's too long. So here I'm gonna say, here I'm gonna check if all the grids are full. So if all the grids are full, it's either one of the players win or it's a tie, like no one won. So here it's gonna say, here we assumed that the player won after we checked the check win function. We assumed that one of the players won. Uh, and how is that? Like, here we check that all the buttons are disabled. And in this part, we check if it's a tie, if no one won. Otherwise, um, I'm gonna switch between the players. So if the current player is O, it's gonna become X. And if it's, for example, here I assume that if current player is O, make it X. If it's already X, make it O. And I'm gonna say it's whose turn. For example, if it was O's turn, I'm gonna say, okay, O is done. Player X to move, so it's X's move. And here I just make sure that all the buttons clicked are disabled. What else? Okay, here this, it's not really important. It's just for the design of the window. So here I have a root. Root is my main window as I explained before. Here I have the font, how it's gonna look like. Here I have the height, here the width. Um, yeah, that's it. And here's it's just the font. It's not the important part. The important part is how it works. So we're gonna run it now and see. So we're gonna make the player X win horizontally. So I'm gonna say first X, then I'm gonna say X. Here I can't click this button again because it's already clicked. It's disabled now. I'm gonna say X. So in this way, player X wins. Now I'm gonna run it again. I should. Okay. So now I'm gonna make the player. Let's say player O. I'm gonna make player O win vertically. So I'm gonna say O O. In this way, player O wins vertically. I'm gonna make the player win this way. That's the diagonal. So I'm gonna say O. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna say O. O. This way, player O wins. And if I start from this way, player X or player O is gonna win the same way. So that's diagonal 2. And that's it.